consistent, Ricky.
I've missed that sound so much.
Dude, bro.
All right, so Jamie's just gonna be our certified AC tube holder.
Yep, you're hired. His job title is AC director.
Just aim it wherever we're working. Oh, that feels real nice. Getting our tube here plumbed off of the unit. She is up and operational, and she is cranking some cold air.
Not bad.
Feels nice, huh?
Yeah.
It's not hot yet, but when it is, that's gonna be real great.
100-degree days outside, buddy.
He's cooking. Well, not cooking.
Not cooking. We're uncooking.
He's cooling.
Yep. I told Kyle I'm gonna run the paint off the floor right over here. We got this vent that comes directly down, and there's gonna be a big old ring of no paint on the floor.
That's gonna be Wyatt's spot.
Yeah.
So update. This is Wyatt's new spot.
And
Right here on the chair.
AC spots, you know.
Right underneath the vent. So we got the other vent connected right here. This is our little temporary setup. She is up and operational, as you guys just saw, and she is moving some air. This thing is definitely going to be a game changer for us in the summer. It's about 85 degrees out right now. It's actually the next day, and it's about 74 degrees in the shop right now. And we still need to have Mike come over and do a static pressure test just to make sure that we do have enough vents cut out into this box right here, because this is a 5-ton unit. She does move a lot of air, so we want to make sure that it is getting enough airflow and we're cooling the shop efficiently. I did see all of the comments, some concerns about cost a month running this thing, and saying we need to insulate our walls. And that is all stuff we will definitely look into, but we wanted to just get something in here and try it out how the shop is currently set up. But if it does cost us a lot to run this unit a month, and it has to just stay cranked the whole time just because of how much heat we're losing because of not being insulated, or how much heat's actually coming in, we will look into insulating the walls and doing all of that stuff. But we got some vents to throw on there. We got our thermostat hung up on this piece of wood right here, so that will get us by for right now. And right now we are doing some work on the Reassembling, and Wyatt is working on getting a mid plate made for this thing. So because we have the all-wheel drive and the transfer cases back here, we don't really have room to do a full mid plate all the way back. There are some holes back here that we could make a mount off of. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna reuse the mount that was already back there. And this one shouldn't be taking too much load, but it will still definitely be helping. But now a lot of the load will be taken up by this guy right here. So I just got this piece made out of mild steel. That just goes to our traction bar right there. He's getting a couple tabs welded on, or just that single tab?
Yeah, I'll just do a single tab. I mean, it's 1/4-inch steel. It ain't gonna go anywhere.
Yeah,
so.
That's a thick plate right there.
Yep.
So we got that guy on there, and that should help keep from the engine rocking around in the engine bay of the Reassembling here, because that back mount was seeing a lot of abuse.
Yeah, it was the only thing holding it from rocking the engine back and forth. So, you know, we just went with the 1/4-inch front deal to help alleviate some of that rotational force on it. And yeah, I think it's gonna solve all our issues with beating up that mount like it was.
Yep, that should do her.
Today, the transmission for the MR2 is going back together. If you guys remember, I showed the nice fancy billet case we got for this thing, and we finally have the correct shim to get this all put back together. I was waiting forever on getting these shims in so we could have the proper clearances for the differential. This is the box of shims that I went through. I have tested every single one of those, and then I finally got one that is the right size, so we are good to go there. That is already in the case, and now we can go ahead and start reassembling our sequential transmission here. We got fresh bearings in the case. These are both brand new. I have a brand new seal for the input shaft. This is a metal piece that you have to modify a little bit because it hits back here, so you do have to grind some material off of that guy, because everything on this billet case is nice and beefy, even around where these shift fork holders go. That was all beefier than an OEM one. So a couple modifications there, and I got all of the gears swapped off of the old counter shaft onto the new one. So this is the one that busted that tooth right there. That guy is trash, and then we have the brand new one right here ready to go with all of the gears on top of it, and then everything else we need is inside this box right here, and I'm ready to go ahead and get this thing slapped back together. I know you guys have seen me put together these sequential transmissions several times, and I'm sorry if it's getting repetitive, but that's what we're doing today. So we're gonna have another time lapse of this one going together for the MR2.
Hey guys, coming at you after a 2-hour delay. I almost had the transmission together, as you saw by the time lapse, but I ran into an issue. I put it on its side to turn the input shaft before I torqued the nuts and sealed everything up just to make sure it was spinning over good, and it was not. The input shaft was completely locked up, and after troubleshooting and troubleshooting some more, I ended up tearing the whole transmission back apart, and I found the issue. This was not a fun fix, and I'm gonna walk you guys through what I went through, whether you like it or not. So, got the transmission pulled apart, just like I said. What I did was I took everything out of the transmission except for the input shaft, and I left the diff in there just because it's kind of hard to get out, but I was focusing on the input shaft here. I took the case and I bolted that down to the bell housing just with like 4 bolts along the outside, and right when I'd start to snug up those bolts, the last like couple millimeter gap closing up around the case here, the input shaft would go from spinning freely to locked up. And that is not good. So basically there's an issue between the distance between this bearing and the bearing in here. So all that is trying to be squeezed together, and somewhere the clearance isn't right and everything's locking up, right? So I pulled it apart, and my first thought was maybe this bearing isn't pressed all the way in, because if that bearing's not all the way in, it's gonna sit this a little higher, which is gonna press it into that bearing harder. That could lock it up. So I made sure that that bearing was pressed all the way down, smacked it a few times with my hammer, did it again, same issue. So then I went to these bearings. These are brand new bearings that I just replaced, and I took them out and took a micrometer and measured the thickness of them just to make sure that they matched the bearings that came out of this thing previously, because I did replace those with brand new bearings, and they are aftermarket, so I wanted to make sure that they were the right size. My speaker just turned off, sorry about that. But I wanted to make sure that those bearings were the right size to make sure that they weren't a little thicker, and that was causing this gap to close up some as well. Turns out those bearings were identical to the ones that came out, so that was not the issue either. So I'm sitting here kind of stumped. I'm like, what the heck? So just for fun, what I did was I pulled the input shaft out, and there are 2 OEM shims under here that have to go under the input shaft. And I was also thinking like maybe I have too thick of a shim under here, but I know these shims right here, there are no other sizes. These are what they are. There's no adjusting this right here. Like the diff, there's a whole bunch of different shims like I showed you guys, but these shims that go under the input shaft, it's just these 2. There's a spring washer and a flat washer, and that is that. But just to see what would happen, I took them out and put this back in there with no shims, thinking that would suck this down some, and that would finally let it free up, right? I tightened it all back together. Same issue. When I'd fully snug it, this would still lock up. So I was really thinking, okay, what is going on? I took it all apart again, and without these shims under there, I could see that there was a gap underneath this gear, and it was sitting like a few millimeters up like that off of the bearing. So I would press it all the way down, and that's as far as it would go. Even hitting it with a hammer, it would not fully sink down into this bearing. So that made me think, and I went ahead and pulled this guy out, and here is what I finally found, boys. So this taper right there on the end of that input shaft, see where it gets thicker? That guy was hitting on the aluminum of the billet bell housing, and I found that it was not letting it fully sit down. So if you look down in there, you can see where I took a Dremel and I actually ground some material out from the inside all the way around in there. And now we are freaking good to go, boys. So that was not fun figuring all of that out, but I talked to Jeremy at Drag Cartel. He is the one who makes this product, and according to him, I'm one of the first to do a sequential in a front wheel drive style transmission bell housing. We just did one in the Rousey, and I got that one put together, and I had 0 issues with that billet bell housing, and that's the same product from Drag Cartel, just the all-wheel drive version. For whatever reason, the front wheel drive housing is slightly different, and we had to make that modification. And don't worry about the material I had to grind out from inside of there. It is still very strong. There's no structural integrity lost, and it doesn't need to be like a perfectly machined finish underneath there, because all of that is past the input shaft seal, and after that it's, you know, whatever, and we just need that material out of the way and make sure it's not rubbing on the input shaft itself. And I double checked it. I got the input shaft in there, tightened it down with the back half of the case there, and it's good to go. Spins freely, and I was really pumped on that. I was like, freaking finally, dude, got it figured out. And that is my few-minute story of my struggles. Hope you guys enjoyed. And now you guys can see what we go through here sometimes on Kyle's Custom Transmission Shop LLC that I just made up. I'm gonna go ahead and get this all put back together. I'm not gonna time lapse it because you guys just saw what I did already. So I'm gonna do it again, and this time it should be done and ready to go. And the MR2 will have a transmission, and we can get this thing all put back together.
That is what we want, boys. A nice, smooth spinning shaft. Case is all tightened down. No more issues. We are good to go. All right, guys, we are just about done here. Got the nuts on the top of both of the shafts torqued. They are staked, so they will not be coming loose. And I did the same thing to this nut as I did on the transmission in the Rousey. I went ahead, brought it over to the welding table, and threw a tack on the nut, because this is the one that we have had come loose in the past, but it has Loctite and a tack on it, so it is welded into place. It should not be going anywhere. We got our little collars that go on top of the shafts there, ready to go. Got the shift barrel retorqued and staked on that nut right there. And then this one is torqued and staked as well. Then we just have this extension in there for now, holding all of our forks in place, because the rod that holds those guys is pressed into this cap. Ever since I did the MR2's transmission from day one, once this rod got tightened down into that hole, this thing has never come out. I've tried to get it out with a blowtorch, and this thing's just part of the lid. So like on the minivan's trans, I can actually put that rod in there separate and then put the cap on, but for this transmission, I have to kind of do it all at once. But that is the last piece, and then just the little shift mechanism. And we're good to go, boys. The transmission for the MR2 will be done and ready to be put back into the car, and we can get the MR2 back up and ripping again. I'm getting excited, guys. The MR2 is on the lift because she is starting to go back together. Got the transmission all done. I ran it through all of the gears, and we are good to go. Everything is working beautifully. Shaft is spinning nice and smooth, no more binds. All I need to do is just get the speed sensor in that hole right there. I just have it plugged with a napkin right now, but I got the axle seals in as well, and everything else is ready to go on the transmission for the MR2. You also have to swap out this little ball piece right here for the fork for the throwout bearing, so I do have to get that on as well. And speaking of the throwout bearing, we have some new clutch stuff that just showed up. So this is a new triple disc clutch from Clutch Masters. This is our original flywheel. I sent our whole clutch in to Clutch Masters, and they said that our pressure plate and discs were pretty much just toast, so they replaced this whole section. This is all brand new right here, and then we are reusing our original flywheel. It just got resurfaced, so we are good to put this onto the car, which I'm getting ready to do right now, and then we can go ahead and get the car dropped back down and get our sequential back in this thing. All right, boys, we are ready to test fire the MR2 with the new transmission installed, ready to go. We just don't have the charge pipes on, but pretty much everything else is ready to go. And we just went ahead and ran it through the gears once again to make sure everything feels good. Got the clutch hooked up and at first we had a little bit of a scare. The pedal felt kind of weird, but
Yeah.
I just think we weren't used to this thing. It felt kind of stiff, and it almost seemed like all of the throw on the clutch wasn't there, but after we messed around with it, we think the clutch is fine. So we're good to go there. And we just powered everything on, got the ECU plugged back in, and the battery has been sitting this whole time, and she still has a strong charge. We turned it over a little bit as well, just to build up some fuel pressure, and the pressure came right up almost instantly.
Just like
And
that.
this thing's been sitting for, what, at least a month? Maybe over a month.
Yeah,
and
probably longer than that.
and the fuel pressure came right up. I mean, there were freaking cobwebs building up on the wheels.
Yeah.
Poor thing's been sitting in the corner over there, but we are just about ready to fire this thing up. We just got fluid in the transmission as well. So we're gonna go ahead and test fire it. And since we got it on the lift here, I'm gonna put this little box up under the wheelie sensor, because we don't, it's gonna be hard to see the dot here. If I pull it away, you can actually see the dot on the ground right there. So if we have the car up on the lift, it's gonna run weird because it's thinking the car is gonna do a wheelie. So it's gonna pull timing.
out of it,
Yeah, it's gonna be running all weird. So we got that under there so it doesn't think it's doing a backflip. And yeah, I think we're good to go here.
Shooting freaking laser beams, dude.
And we got lasers coming out of our car, man. But I'm excited to hear this thing run again. It has been a minute.
Yeah, it's been too long.
So I guess without further ado,
Give her a shot.
fire this girl up. Ignition is hot.
Yep.
I'm just gonna stand back here. I'd say just
do it?
go for it. Yep.
Yeah. I'll make the leaks or anything.
All right, I'll yell if you need to shut it down. Need to tighten that. Hell yeah, boy. I have missed that sound so much. I forgot how loud it is. We're losing our dash. It fell. And brake.
Decent, Ricky.
I've missed that sound so much.
Dude, bro.
I
The
forgot
smell, the
I forgot how
sound.
throaty this thing was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that E90, that
Dude.
Ignite baby.
Smells great.
Some good stuff.
Mm.
Glad to hear it running again.
Yeah. It's been a minute.
Oh, that clutch is brutal in there without a seat. I'm like holding myself to the cage.
Right.
Because it's just pushing me back. But yeah, boys. She's
runs.
back up and going. She went
Sounds
through all the
healthy.
gears.
Yeah.
Might
Had great oil and fuel pressure right off the
Yeah.
bat. Like, you can't ask for
had a
whole
little
lot
bit
more.
of a cold start there, but
Yeah.
it fired right up. Other than that, it's been sitting for a while. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. We just got to button up a couple other things. We still have to finish the Lexan windows as well before we can go back to the track. But we want to try to button this thing up and bring it back out here pretty soon is the plan. But now that the transmission's back together, we're good to go. Because that's all that we broke last time it was out, just that one tooth. So now it's all fixed with the billet bell housing. And now the transmission in this thing is as built as it can get. There's no more we can do to it. So the drivetrain is 100% fully upgraded, and it's pretty crazy to think about that now the transmission in this thing has almost no OEM parts in it at all except the bearings. The belt housing is completely aftermarket, the outer case is completely aftermarket, the shafts, the gears, and almost everything isn't Honda anymore. It's all aftermarket, which is pretty wild to think about. But
bearings and seals, that's about the only thing
the
OEM.
only OEM parts left. There's nothing metal in there that is OEM except like the dowels.
Right.
That's about it, and maybe a couple bolts. But yeah, boys, she's back together with her new built transmission.
Decent. Get it out to the track soon.
Yep.
Go make a
to back
pass.
up that 7.
Yep.
That's what we need. We've only done it once, so
Yep.
pop off another 790 would be awesome. And I think we're gonna go back out with more weight in the nose because we know there's a lot more there, even in the 60 foot. Not bad.
Feel good?
Feels fine.
Nice. Heck yeah, dude.
It's about all the driving we can do. Maybe we
Yep.
could take it down the road to really go through the gears, but I think she's good.
Yep. Decent
The
rig.
lift test was enough, so yeah, I'm pumped, dude. Back
Back.
together, finally.
Yep.
Been so long, waiting on those freaking shims. And then everyone just saw the struggles I went through the other night getting that trans together. That's why we have, you know, some days delayed sometimes on the uploads, boys. You're gonna have that on these race car jobs, but we get it done eventually. Get a good look at that turbo while it's still small.
While it's still there.
We might upgrade that bad boy in the future.
GT55, let's go.
Pro Mod 88, let's go 200.
About it.
Well, boys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. The MR2 is almost back together, but still got some things to do before we get that thing back to the track. And we've also been making progress on the Odyssey here. Wyatt has been over here wiring. This is the K-tuned harness that we originally had in the van, and he cut the ends off to go to the ECU, and he's re-pinning everything for the fuel tech.
Yep.
So it's going to use the plugs that come with the fuel tech. It's going to be nice and clean.
Yep.
And we're going to do the quick connect.
Bulkhead right on the firewall. Make it super easy. Take this thing in and out. Just kind of clean it up too.
Yeah, that is going to come out sweet. So Wyatt has been working on that while I got the MR2 all the way back together. But it's going to be wrapped for this video, boys.
Yes, sir.
So we have more to come. And I also want to go ahead and plug our shirts real quick for the MR2. We got the Moon Tune and world's first 7-second MR2 shirts back in stock. So I'll throw a link to those real quick. So if you guys want to grab a shirt now that the MR2 is back for good spirit, feel free to go to our website and do that. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.